I walk and teach a serious conversation. Yeah, perfect. And end up in the small cabin in the little house in the prairie.
Almost like the little house in the prairie.
A little bit. That's another Minnesota Midwest.
Yes. Are we going to be okay here?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Are you okay?
Okay, yes.
Oh, well, it is just such an absolute pleasure to meet you and to have you here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, we were wondering specifically about your characters, just because they're so vivid and full of life and compelling, and how much is based on people you know, and how much is invented, or is there? I suppose there's not an equation.
In a way, they're all based on people I know, and they're all invented. And so there are sort of particular details of appearance or mannerisms or something like that, which will be based on people I know. And then very often the background and the story and the history, and sometimes the way of speaking will be something that I invent. Creating the characters is the longest process, because at the beginning I really only had a very sketchy idea, and it's as I follow the characters through the story that I get to know them, and once I know them, then I can go right back to the beginning and I sort of flesh them out again. It's what makes writing a very long process for me. I know other people do it more efficiently and they do all sorts of preparatory work, but actually I like to be with the characters as they go through the story. And as I say, by the end of it, I feel that they've become my friends or enemies.
So we were wondering also about the balance between comedy and then the serious elements of your literature.
And so I think a lot of people are like that. You know, we live in a sort of a hard, dark, cruel, brutal world, but humour is one of the things which lets us sort of rise above it and escape from it, and in a way deal with it.
So, how many of your novels focus on personal histories within a wider historical narrative, or social conditions? Do you see the role of an individual person within wider social periods?
Yes, I think that actually is the way that I write. Other people focus much more on an individual's life journey and don't sketch in the background as much. But I'm always interested, partly because of the way that I grew up. I'm interested in the way that an individual reacts with their social context and what people say to them and how they grow up and where they get their ideas from and what they want to do during their time in the world. This is very true of my next book, which you won't have read yet.
No.
Called Various Pets Alive and Dead. But that's about an older generation who grew up in the 60s, you know, in the 60s, and there were demos, there was dope, there was great music, there was free love, and there was squalor on a scale that most young people wouldn't tolerate now. And so they lived in a commune, they did all of those things, but their children have grown up, you know, they're children of the Thatcher generation. One of them has become a school teacher, one of them has become a banker. So it's very much that, it's individuals, you know, within their social context, bouncing off each other.
We particularly enjoyed analyzing the references and potentially metaphorical uses within your novels. So
I was a bit intrigued by that. What did you have in mind?
With the strawberries and the apples, well, we just felt like there were such recurrent images.
Yes.
And is it something with the fertility and the lushness of
course,
the land?
yes, it's about ripeness and fertility and richness. And in a way, certainly the apples, less the strawberries, but it's a lot, it's to do with Ukraine as well. Ukraine is that sort of country where just full of orchards, cherry orchards actually. We should have had cherries instead of strawberries.
How do you find a balance between the more writing like the you've got the balance between more literary text with something that's much more fun and comic. Is it difficult to switch back and forth?
It is difficult, and I never know whether I've got the right balance, because humour is a very particular thing. So, for example, in Two Caravans, I was very committed to the dog being able to have his own voice. But almost without exception, in the reviews that I had, and even the critics who really liked the book said, you know, it was wonderful. Why did she have to have that magical talking dog? I thought you've completely missed the point.
Would you, based on the critics' opinions afterwards, would you have taken them out? Or?
No, because every reading that I went to with the Caravan, somebody, and sometimes a group of people, would come up to me at the end and say, "You loved the dog." And I just thought it was extraordinary that the critics could get it so wrong, because it isn't the people who love the dog were. You know, they liked it because they were dog lovers. They liked it because within the context of the story, as you said, put everything together. Yeah.
Yes. I think we'll move on to.
Oh, lovely. Okay,
thank you. Want to have a little wander around the
garden?
garden?
Let's have a look at the garden.
Okay.
Well, I mean, actually, in my garden, they're like weeds. They take over. But in fact, I think here they flower more. You know, sometimes when the conditions are poor, the flowers actually flower better.
Oh, okay.
Yes, because they need to plant seeds. So the flowers.
Oh, I suppose it's their way of sort of preserving.
Yeah, sounds nice.
I'll go this way.
Oh, look at these. How beautiful.
It's very nice. So you were saying about your characters taking over, and writing an essay is very different than writing about writing creatively.
I think when you write an essay, you have to have a plan and a structure to make sure that everything fits together. And with essays, you have to have this sort of very cunning way that one argument feeds onto another. But the very hard thing with novels is that if you want to edit them or change something, you have to change. It's a bit like if you're sewing something and you need to put an extra bit in, you have to find a place to chop it apart, stitch the other piece in, and then sew it back together again. And it all has to flow as though that was the only way you could do it. Well, look at this little pond here.
Isn't it lovely? So you're in your books, in the short history of tractors in Ukrainian, you talk a lot about gardening, and it sounds like you're a major gardener as well.
My mum was an absolutely passionate gardener, and I learned it from her. And I think as I've got older, I've grown a bit more like her, and so I really, really like gardening now. It's a great pleasure for me. Do your parents garden?
My mother has a very green thumb. She enjoys it as well. She calls it her Zen time.
Yes.
To be out in the garden.
American.
Is that do you spend time in your garden when you're trying to get inspiration?
It's more work I have to do, because the trouble is I travel around so much and I'm so busy that every time I come back the grass has grown and the plants leave hacking back, and it's not as much a pleasure as it used to be. It's very sad.
Well, you need to get someone in to do the dirty work, and then you can just do the finishing touches.
That's my plan.
Ah, okay.
But in the especially in the short history of tractors, it's almost a tribute to my mother and her garden, and there's a huge amount of gardening in it. And the plants are named in the way that she taught me the names of plants.
Well, you certainly get the feel of that it's it's almost an oof to your
it is
to your mother.
Yes, it is.
A bit overgrown in here.
Whereas, the overgrown is like the Mrs. Shapiro house, which is the garden that's really gone wild,
totally out of control.
Which is a bit more like my garden now, and and there are seedlings everywhere, and you have to get them out of the way, and there are the grass has never been cut, and there are wild tomcats on the prowl
everywhere. And I love the fact that the tree has actually gotten into the house, and it's breaking the house open, but they just can't. They're not going to tear it down.
They can't do it.
No, how could
and
they?
And then of course there's this sort of terrible relic of the war embedded in the foundations of the house, which if you want to take it metaphorically, you could. But I've tried not to make the metaphors too in your face.
No, I think there's some of them are also there to feed upon.
Yes, they're there if you want them. If you just want the story's there.
So most of your writing is taking place in England. Have you ever thought about writing someplace else or about someplace else?
I do, yes. I mean, my daughter has spent a lot of time in Africa, and that's something that intrigues in the potential settings. But because most of my readers are English, I at least like to start it in somewhere where they are. And maybe, yes, it's true, maybe I will go a bit further afield in a future novel.
Do you feel like you'd have to be in that place in order to write about it? Because, I mean, obviously the connection that you have to where you are.
Well, when I wrote the Israel bits in the We're All Made of Glue, ever such a lot of stuff I was able to find out from maps, from talking to people, from photos, from Google Earth. And then there was a point at which I needed to know whether you could actually see the sea or what the view was from a particular hilltop. And the only way I could do that was actually to go there.
And how was that?
Well, it was very interesting, and of course I also found out lots of other material. And it was interesting, and I knew I'd have to do it. But it was actually, in a way, before I went, I needed to know the very concrete things. What grows? What are the plants that are there? What colour are the rocks? And what can you smell? All the sensual things, the things that you actually can't find on the internet.
No, you really have to feel in order to make it authentic.
You do have to.
Okay, well, I just wanted to thank you so much, and we very much appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
out.
I shan't treasure it. I shall eat it.
That's better. That's better.
Yes. And thank you very much. It's been lovely talking to Alice.
Indeed, likewise. All right, thank you, and we'll get you back to the
Yes.
Comédie de Livre for
Thank
the
you.
next event.
Thank you.